Good evening. My name is Maya Spikes, and I'm the Executive Director of Triangle Association of Freelancers, also known as TAF. And we will get started with our monthly meeting for February 2026. If you're joining us for the first time on YouTube and just happen to be checking us out on YouTube, Triangle Association of Freelancers, also known as TAF, is an organization for nonfiction and fiction writers. And we are based in Raleigh, North Carolina. But we are very fortunate to have great members not only across the state, but in other parts of the country. And sometimes for our traveling writers in other countries as well. Tonight, one of our members, Tara Minter, will be interviewing award-winning writer Kianna Alexander, who we're not only very excited to have to speak with during tonight's meeting, but Kianna will also be one of the presenters at our annual conference right now in May 2026. So, with all of that being said, Tara and Kianna, I will give you the floor to start the interview.
All right. I'll start with a short intro to Kiana's background. Kianna Alexander published her first book, a suspense novel with romantic elements, with an independent publisher in 2009. Since then, she's published over 40 more titles across romance, women's fiction, and historical genres. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in English Language and Literature from Fayetteville State University with a minor in history. She's a speaker, workshop facilitator, and professional publication consultant, and has spoken to audiences all over the country. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight. So I'm going to kick it off with the first question I normally start with, which is, what inspired you to become a writer?
I think, I was always reading as a kid. Um, I read whatever I could get my hands on. I was an early reader. I want to say 4 or 5, I guess 4 or 5, my mom told me, is when I started like reading. Um, so whatever I could get my hands on, I wanted to read it. And that eventually led me to the whole like middle grades, sort of standard, compendium of middle grade things. I read all the like Sweet Valley books. I think from middle school, Sweet
Yeah.
Valley middle school up until like university. And then I read Goosebumps and Fear Street. And I read a little bit of like Nancy Drew and
Yes.
Hardy Boys, Boxcar Children. Like I kind of glommed onto series, whatever series I could find, where youngsters were getting involved in some kind of adventurous activities. And as I got older, eventually kind of stumbled into romance novels. There were always romance novels around me. My mom had a collection of, Ye Old Harlequin Presents, like sitting on the shelf. I don't know that she ever actually read them. I think they were mostly just for decoration, but they were books, so I was going to read them. And I read some of those and was like, okay, I guess. And then I got my hands on Beverly Jenkins' Night Song.
Mhm.
My stepmom had like a copy of it. And I think it was one of those where like she signed up for the book club and you would order the books and they'd send you so many books every month. And she just had stacks of books and she only read some of them. I don't think she'd ever read that one. It was just sitting there. But it was a hardcover original of Night Song with the dust jacket and everything. And if at the time I had known how valuable it was, I definitely would have taken it and kept it. But I saw it on the bookcase. I picked it up and it's like, here's this beautiful pastoral scene of like a black couple in, it's obviously like historical dress. And there's a horse and, like the field of flowers. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this. It just looked like something that was about to be so interesting. I was already deeply into my history nerd thing. I was 16, so I was taking like American history for my social studies credit that year. And I picked it up and looked at it and was like, what's going on here? So I took it to her and I said, hey, Tracy, can I read this book? And she's like, girl, I don't care. Because I don't even think she knew she had it. So I read it and it just sort of rewired my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't know that a story could be told in such a fashion where I could learn all these things that were like historically true and then also be entertained by like the relationship that's happening between the hero and heroine. That's
Mm-hmm.
fun in the background. He likes
Okay.
to have a little outburst when he knows that mommy is busy. My wife is like shepherding him to his room now, like, hush. Um, but that that was probably the first time I thought about it deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I couldn't really explain it at the time. I felt I felt a certain way about the story. Um, I think the closest that I can say is that I felt seen.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I wanted to try to write something that might make somebody else feel
Feel seen.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And that was kind of the first time I thought about it seriously. I had been doing it, like I'd been making up stories since forever and keeping them in various notebooks and stuff around the house. And I'd had teachers before point out the fact that I had a writing talent. But I don't think I really thought about it until then. So I guess it probably started there.
Okay.
Um, it would take me a long time to actually pursue it, but I think it's where it started becoming something that I maybe took seriously.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with your extensive knowledge and experience, what are some of the important lessons you learned collaborating with independent publishers to get your books out into the world?
I think that at the time I got in kind of right around the early adoption stage, which is like what we call the era when e-readers were first becoming a thing. Like the
Mm-hmm.
first Kindle came out. I started publishing in 2009. The first Kindle probably came out '08, somewhere between '08 and 2010. And so you had these new devices. They were pretty cheap. Like they weren't too terribly expensive. Like it cost way less than buying a laptop or something.
Yeah.
And you could fit at the time, I think you could fit like, I don't know, 75 100 books. Like they didn't have as much memory then as they have now. And that was like, for the like real readers, that was like, oh, I can, have all of these books with me all the time. So people were like searching for books. So it was a good time to start if you were either doing it on your own in a way that you could actually like get to the audience or if you were working with a good press. I worked with I think three or four like really small publishing houses. And most of them have since gone out of business. A lot of them were like ebook only, indie houses with really small staffs, people kind of scattered across the country doing things over the internet. I don't really see as many independent presses like that now.
Okay.
Even when they do pop up, I notice that they're more likely to have some sort of physical proximity to each other. Maybe it's two or three people who live in the same town that are working together. It's less likely to be just everything's online. I mean, there's a little more expectation of accountability than there was back then when it was new and everybody, it was like the Wild West. Everybody was just like, I'm gonna, slap together a publishing house and I'm gonna put some books out and it'll be great without really thinking through the process of what all that was going to entail, that there's all these different levels of things that have to be done, editing and, you know, art design and marketing, and they weren't really thinking too deeply about the process itself, just, get book, put book out, make money. So I think it's changed a lot in that you don't see as many of those. And I think indie presses that start now realize that people expect for them to do both. They can't just be ebook only now. That's pretty rare. They have to do print, even if it's, print on demand or whatever the case might be. But there's an expectation that they're going to do print and also that they're going to have some sort of distribution deal. Back
Mm-hmm.
then it was like, we're just a publisher. We're going to publish your book. It'll be on Amazon. Like there was never any question of whether or not it was going to be in a bookstore because there was no bookstore to put it in. It wasn't even physical. So I think more than anything, expectations have changed among like writers and readers that they'll be able to get the books across different channels and formats. People want, audio and all these different things. And like if you can't provide that as a company, you won't last long.
Yeah.
But I found that like the indie press experience generally meant that it was a smaller staff. It might take longer for people to get back to you because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have, 20 people working in the marketing department or whatever. Um, and that you had limited distribution, which I think to some degree is still true, because the bookstores sometimes won't work with them. Sometimes libraries won't. It just depends. Um, so I think it's not necessarily it's not the same as what it was. I think it's improved a lot over time, but I don't know if it makes sense for somebody who's looking to do a specific thing. Like if you're wanting to just get the book out and you just want to offload a lot of the stuff you would have to do if you self-published, I think
Hmm.
it's probably a viable like middle of the road solution, but I don't know that it makes sense to go that route if you're looking to sort of expand beyond that in terms of like reach and opportunities. I don't know that it makes sense to do that. You probably are really looking at the bigger houses or at doing it yourself and putting a lot of time and money into it.
Hmm. Okay. Well, you've already kind of touched on my next question, which is what led you to get into writing historical books. When did you start that process of writing historical books?
I mean, I'd written historical romance like way back in like the 2010s. I think
Hmm.
I want to say Kissing the Captain came out in 2012, and that was my first historical romance.
Yeah.
And that series went through to 2015 or 2016.
Hmm.
There's like one, two, three, four. There's four books and like a short story in it.
Yeah.
Um, there was meant to be a fifth. I just never got around to writing it. Like I just never got back to it. I just started the process of it, outlined it and stuff, but I never actually got around to like writing the fifth book. But it was that was meant to be another one.
Okay.
Um, so that was kind of the start of writing anything historical, like for publication. And
Hmm.
then I wrote Carolina Built during 2021, 2020 and 2021. Like that whole, it was like a year and a half or so of writing and research because
Hmm.
historical fiction is a different animal. It requires a lot more word count, page count, like content. So that meant doing a lot more research than what I would typically do for historical romance.
Yeah.
But I wanted that because I wanted to be able to pivot.
Hmm.
I didn't want to only write romance. I didn't want to quit writing romance, but I didn't want to only write romance because there are a lot of limits
Hmm.
placed on the genre. You're only going to get offered so much money on contracts. There's sort of an expectation that you have to write series. Like writing a standalone as a romance is doggone near impossible.
Yeah.
Readers will beg, nay, demand for, book four, book five, book six, and it's like the most obscure character. Like, hey, you know that one scene where they went to the grocery store? That lady at the checkout counter, I think she needs a man, and you should write her a book. It never ends. Like I have series that I stopped writing in, 10 years ago, and it's like, hey, is there ever going to be another? No, I'm tapped. I've moved on, but they love a series. So when
Yeah.
I write historical fiction, the books are kind of meant to stand on their own. So nobody's like, hey, when's the next one connected to this? And
Hmm.
decide to write about a totally different topic. No one's gonna get mad. So it's a little bit more freeing and it's definitely way more money. Like it's easily 5 to 10 times more on advance
Hmm.
than for historical fiction than it is for romance because they understand how research heavy it is, and also the historical fiction reader is not as price sensitive as the
Yeah.
romance reader because they don't read as fast. So if you're not buying like 50 books every month, you don't mind paying more for the, maybe
Hmm.
5 or 10 books you are going to buy.
Yeah.
So that works out well for everybody. But I wanted the flexibility to write something else because I knew writing romance was always going to be kind of the fun thing,
Hmm.
but it was not going to be the money making thing.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed Carolina Built because it was on a character, a real life person from North Carolina that I never had heard of. And so I definitely appreciate how you brought her to life, Josephine Leary. But what led you to wanting to write her particular story?
A tweet.
Okay.
It was a tweet. It was 2019, and at the time Twitter was the water cooler for publishing.
Hmm.
That is the only name you will ever hear me call that hell site. It's Twitter. It
Hmm.
was and is Twitter. Um at the time that's where everybody was kind of hanging out. Like if you were a published author, if you were agents, editors, publicists, marketing people, that's just where all the publishing people went. I always called it the water cooler.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since it was sold and it became a weird place where, bots make child porn and stuff. All
Mm-hmm.
of that has moved over to Blue Sky. If anybody's wondering where the water cooler now, it's on Blue Sky.
Okay.
Um, and it was an en masse like exodus from Twitter to Blue Sky. Like I have the same amount of followers on Blue Sky that I had on Twitter. Like they all left. Um, so there was this conversation constantly going on about publishing, but I was following a lot of people that either I wanted to work with, had worked with, etc. And I was following Sarah Younger because she was on my list of people I was looking at because I knew I was seeking a new agent. I had an agent at the time who was generally, I mean, perfectly fine to work with. I didn't have any problems with her.
Mm-hmm.
Thing was that I felt like because agenting was secondary to her,
Okay.
her main career was being a lawyer, and I think she did like IP and corporate law. Because agenting was separate to her. I think she just didn't have the kind of connections that I wanted for what I was trying to do. Like she could, if I was only going to write romance, I probably could have stayed with her. But I knew I wanted to expand into other genres, and she wasn't really capable of that. So I was looking and I was following a bunch of people that I knew I might want to work with. One of them was Sarah. She was in Edenton. This is probably March, April, May, like the spring of 2019. She's in Edenton and she's just visiting home because she's from that area. She happened by the historic site um in Edenton, the Penelope Baker House, I think. And they
Mm-hmm.
had a like an exhibit up about Mrs. Leary.
Okay.
And um she happened upon the exhibit and she took a picture of it and tweeted about it, like a little thread, maybe three tweets. And she's like, oh, this is really cool information. I'm just so surprised that even though I'm from this area, I have never heard of this person. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like she did something really neat. Like, somebody should write a book about this. Who will write this book for me? And I responded to her tweet. I'll do it because this is the kind of thing that I'm into. I'm like, this is an unsung person. This is, a black woman. This is North Carolina history. This is American history. It's my time period of specialty, Gilded Age, 19th century. So it's
Mm-hmm.
all the things. So I was like, yeah, I would totally do this. And I really didn't think about it. Like it was just one of those things that caught my attention. And I responded sort of as like a knee-jerk reaction. Typically, I would not have said anything because I would have thought that that was too forward. But I
Mm-hmm.
answered it. I didn't think she was going to respond. And I think maybe a few hours or a day or something went by. And then I saw that she had replied to my tweet and she said, are you coming to RWA?
Wow.
Um, and I said, yes. The RWA was in July. That year it was in the Marriott Marquis in Times Square, like on Broadway in New York. So we agreed that we'd meet. So I went to the conference. We met up at the bar in the lobby. We sat down and had a conversation. Essentially, we talked about sort of what I had been doing, which she already knew a lot of it. She had, sort of researched me in the interim um, and what I wanted to do next, like what I was trying to do in terms of the direction of my career. We talked about that, and then she asked me, what I thought about the book project itself. Had I looked into it, and I was like, oh no, I immediately started doing research because I'm a nerd and I can't help myself. So I had like a whole kind of outline of like, this is what I want to do. I want to talk about this period of her life. I feel like these things need to be highlighted. We don't get enough of like books that talk about the existence of women in a way that's approachable, like the everyday things that women are still doing now that she had to do too. I feel like, we need more of that. So we had this conversation and we sort of came to an agreement. And she was like, well, I see the things that you've done and you've already, done a lot of things that, required you to kind of go into places where you weren't going to be welcomed or respected or, where you had to be the first Black lady doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I see your vision of what you're trying to do, and I think that I can help you. So when I walked out of the lobby, she was my agent. And then
Wow.
I emailed my original agent to like terminate the
Mm-hmm.
the contract that we had. And she was like, okay, I understand, good luck with everything. There was no bad blood or anything. So it ended up being how I wrote the story, but also how I got with Sarah. And I've been with her ever since. It's been not quite almost 7 years now.
Impressive. Well, you've been ta talking about, writing series and how tough it is to have a standalone book, especially in the romance space. Do you have a different planning process when you're creating storylines and characters when you're writing for a series versus a standalone book?
To some degree, there's usually like an overarching, like kind of a series Bible, mainly so I can keep it with names.
Hmm.
The names of people, they're like tiny details that I often forget during the process, like what color their eyes, when is their birthday,
Hmm.
um, the things that characters might mention or that I might have to describe. Um, I try to keep up with that stuff. Usually there'll just be a folder on my computer that has like the name of the series.
Hmm.
And all the things will go into that folder. A lot of times before I started doing it like this, and I've only been doing the computer way probably, I think I started doing it mostly electronic, maybe 2019, 2020. Before that, everything was in a binder. Like I had actual binders. I printed everything out
Hmm.
um, because I'm still not like, I still like to do things analog. I'm still not the biggest fan of everything being attached to a daggum computer.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's like necessity, like I can't get away from it.
Hmm.
Like I have like three computers now, one for work, one that I use solely for grad school, and then the
Hmm.
one that I use that I'm on now that I use for Kianna Alexander stuff only.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of hard to like completely go analog, but a lot of times I like to handwrite things. So I might like have worksheets and things like that that I print out and fill out, and I might put those in a binder.
Hmm.
So I do a lot of it electronically now, but a lot of times it's like one of the things that I do is archetype sheets. So I'll have a sheet for a book and it'll say the book title, the series, and then it'll have, character A, or like when I was writing straight romance, it'd be like hero and heroine. Now it's mostly like heroine A, heroine B, and it'll give all these like sort of facts about them. Um, their birthday, their astrological sign, favorite color, height, weight, eye color, hairstyle, a little fact about them, like backstory type stuff.
Hmm.
And that document is usually like the first thing that I make when I start a book. And so, like for a series like 404 Sound, all of the art typing documents, outlines, and all that stuff for that series are inside the folder. And it'll be like, for book one, here's this, and then book two, here's this. So that's kind of how I keep track of things. And that's mainly just because I forget stuff. Um, with Harlequin, I had to do that myself. When I did the two books with Montlake, they had somebody who was like a metadata person that's all they did. So when I sent my manuscript in, they would send it back to me with a document. And I think the first one, I want to say it was like 10 or 12 pages. It's literally just names. It's
Wow.
all the named streets, all the buildings I named, the ice cream shop, whatever, who owns it,
Yeah.
all the things. They detailed all the things out. So like when I
Hmm.
went to write the second book, I just went back to that document.
Okay.
So I love that they had somebody to do that stuff for me because I was like, oh, that's great because I'd be forgetting. Um, so when there is somebody in house that does that, um, and I've come across that a couple of times, but I don't think anybody was more thorough than the lady that did it for Montlake.
Hmm.
10 pages of names. I was like, I didn't even know I had this many names in the oh my God, who are all these people and streets and things? But she kept up with all that. So either I got to keep up with it or somebody else does because I will inevitably forget. And it's not even just from book to book. Sometimes I forget from chapter to chapter. Like at the beginning of the book, I said this, and then I get to the end and I say something else. And then my
Hmm.
kids come back and they're like, well, their eyes were green at the beginning and now they're hazel. And I'm like, oh, snap. That's my bad. I forgot. I don't, I just forgot. So
Yeah.
this is like keeping up with the details is the hard part, which is what makes me kind of cringe at the whole series thing.
Hmm.
I'm not against them as a matter of course, and as a reader myself, I also like a series, but it's
Yeah.
like the details as the writer keeping up with it is a lot for me. And I be forgetting and getting confused and stuff. And I'm like, what's this person's last name again? Or are they an Aquarius or a Gemini? I can't remember. Yeah, that kind of stuff, trying to keep up with it is really what makes it difficult for me.
Mm.
But I try to keep all the things that are related to a series somewhere together, either physically in a binder or
Mm.
a folder on the computer. And I try to put everything is backed up into the cloud. I'm constantly backing things up into the cloud because I've had computers crash on me before.
Yeah.
So I've like computer crash PTSD. So I just
Mm-hmm.
back up things all the time. All the computers are backed up like online to different clouds in case something goes down. Um, Even when I'm writing, I don't draft in Word. I use Novelize because it's online and it backs up everything you write every 2 minutes. And then their servers have a backup server somewhere offshore. So I know I'm
Wow.
not gonna lose my stuff. It
Mm-hmm.
costs, I want to say, $65 for the year. So it's super cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have to worry about my manuscripts getting lost. So they all get written in Novelize. And then I just download it as a Word document when I'm finished.
Mm-hmm.
And then I send that off to the editor or whatever, or whoever is gonna see it next. But up until that point, it's never like on my computer. It's always in the cloud because I don't have time for losing an entire book that I'm halfway through or whatever.
Yeah. So, are there any other changes you'd like to talk about with us to the industry since you started writing books in 2009?
Um, in terms of, I mean, we talked a little bit about the whole thing with how indie presses aren't really the same kind of animal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, a lot of what I say, I know that like when I did write on, I gave out the little comment slips. One of the comment slips was like saying that my talk was negative in tone because I was explaining the things that I had experienced. And I'm like, I don't know, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I'm like, I'm not telling you what you're going to experience. I'm telling you what I experienced. And I think maybe it made them uncomfortable. They hear the ways that I've been disrespected within the industry. Maybe it was something they didn't expect or they didn't really know how to deal with it, but I was just telling what happened to me. I was being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I never regret being honest. And I don't know where the quote comes from, but I remember I've seen it so many times. If people wanted you to write kindly about them, they should have behaved better.
Mm.
Same thing about me speaking. Like, if you didn't want to be called racist, then you should not have been racist.
How do
I don't
you?
know.
Yeah.
Like, I've just experienced a lot of things. And I'm like, I didn't go into the industry thinking that either. Like when I was a baby writer with stars in my eyes, thinking, oh boy, I'm going to publish a book. I wasn't going in there expecting to be treated that way. I wasn't expecting that at all, but that's what happened. It hasn't always been that way. Not every interaction that I've had has been negative. And I told them about positive things too, but I guess what stands out in people's minds is what they heard that was negative.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest change has been this sort of hill and valley thing where when I first started, it was sort of par for the course. I was only in it maybe a year or so before I realized that like there were only certain places that as a Black woman I could publish as long as I was talking about, as long as I was writing about Black characters having a very specific like cultural experience. There were only so many places that I was going to be accepted or taken seriously in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was just the way that it was. Nobody was excited about it. None of the other writers that I knew who were like me, who came from similar backgrounds, were excited about it. But it was what it was. And then there was this peak where things sort of changed, where it became rah rah diversity. We want the all the, diverse books about people from different backgrounds. We want, books by people of color. We want books by queer people. We want books by disabled people and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And that lasted for a couple of years. And then here recently, especially after the last election and the administration change, it's gone back to where it was. Like it's gone back. Like people are like not getting renewed for contracts who had been steadily writing and publishing over this time who
Mm-hmm.
are acquired on the diversity rah-rah train, like, they're not getting contracts renewed, they're getting lowball offers. They're not getting the same distribution, they're not getting the same attention for marketing and publicity, or they're being outright told, well, the interest isn't there anymore. We really wanted your very specific kind of culturally relevant story, but we don't want it anymore. The demand has suddenly dried up. The change almost seemed to happen overnight, but I think it was probably over the course of a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just the conversations that I'm involved in with other writers of color. Um, it's been somewhat disheartening, but honestly, after so long in the industry, I have been waiting for the other shoe to drop. I did not expect it to last.
Mhm.
It was the in thing to do at the time to make it seem like, your company cared about that sort of thing. That as a publishing house, you were, invested in, being fair, being equitable, all of that good stuff, and serving a diverse readership with diverse books.
Mhm.
It looked good on paper. It was something that you could kind of brag about, post on your website, a big banner, we're diverse, we're going to treat everybody fairly over here.
Yeah.
But I never really expected it to last because I had been in this long enough to see it come and go before.
Yeah. When I
So I
interviewed
think
Beverly
that's probably,
Jenkins,
you know,
it wasn't surprising, but she did mention how when she was starting out, the challenges of maybe getting a contract but not getting the marketing dollars.
yeah,
And you're talking about the 90s, and you're saying it's swinging back to not wanting to pick up authors and extend contracts and stuff. So,
it's really disheartening because I know a lot of people who have a lot of talent and a lot of really interesting and like rich stories to tell that are being in some way blocked from telling those stories or from reaching any type of broad audience, just not given the chance. It's always coded as some sort of risk. You'll get like 17 versions of Pride and Prejudice or whatever. But anything that's, even slightly outside of the very familiar central lexicon is, oh, it's a big risk. We can't risk it. We might lose money. Oh God, if we lose money, that's it. That's it for us. So everybody is sort of, now sitting on their hands when, just a year ago, it was, oh, we're going to do all the diverse things. It's going to be great. Um,
mhm.
and like completely ignoring the quality of the writing, the sales, figures, the different types of accolades and stuff. These are books that are winning awards, that are getting TV deals and things like that. The publishers don't care. Like it's like the trend has passed. We don't have to anymore, so we're not going to. Um, so I mean, it's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing, but I notice it. I can't help but be aware of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan. It just seems to me really short-sighted outside of just being, inequitable.
I was impressed that you were able to get Carolina built out because it was so very different from what I was seeing at the time. You're talking about Josephine Leary, a woman in the 1800s who, African American woman who owned a lot of land. And so one of my first thoughts was, did they actually publish this? Because I was like, yeah, I would believe it would not be the type of book that would be picked up by a publisher. I'm glad you were able to get not one, but a second book out, which I plan on reading at some point.
Yeah, with that book, it just happened to be that the editor acquiring it was really excited about the story.
Hmm.
It's sort of the meeting of minds where you kind of happen upon somebody who has similar interests, and she was really intrigued by the story the same way that I was, the same way that Sarah was. And so that meant that she fought for it within the publishing house. And then Sarah advocated for it, to get, the fairest amount for the advance and the fairest contract terms and stuff. So I had people who were in positions of power who were fighting for it because they had a shared interest. And I
Hmm.
think that that was the thing that really made a difference in terms of being able to get that book published. And with the second book, I only signed the contract for that book for just the one book because that's typically how it is with historical fiction. They're not so locked into series.
Hmm.
When I published the second book, the person that had acquired me for Carolina Built had moved on to a different publisher. So that one I ended it. I knew that it was going to be a shorter story because there wasn't as much information available about Octavius and Missy as there was about Josephine. But
Hmm.
there was plenty enough to tell a story. So I was like, it's going to be a novella. I think I'm just going to end this because I don't really want to give up the creative control over this anyway. I have
Hmm.
a certain thing in mind about the way that I want to tell the story, how I want to frame it.
Yeah.
And so I just got together with my agent. They have a lot of interns in-house that are coming from, usually from CUNY or NYU, that are English majors or majoring in creative writing, publishing things that intern with them. So they do proofreading and stuff. And then there are people working within the agency who will handle like, the typesetting and all that.
Hmm.
So that I was able to get like the same type of distribution that I would get from a house. Like you can go in the bookstore and order the book.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll stock it, sometimes they won't. It just depends.
Mm-hmm.
But you can always go in the store and order it because it's the same printer.
Mm-hmm.
Lightning source, I think, going through the same printer. And I have like a paperback, I have a hardback version. I'm working on trying to figure out the whole audio situation with it.
Yeah.
But it was a way for me to kind of navigate around that. But like
Mm-hmm.
that one probably wouldn't have sold because of its length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I knew that I wanted to tell it, so I was like, I'm just gonna indie this one.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. And there's another one. There's a third one because there's one about that I've been working on for a little while about Octavius's granddaughter.
Oh, okay.
Finding things in the family history
Mm-hmm.
where they were just constantly breaking barriers.
Yeah. For those who might not
And
have picked up the book yet, Octavius is the brother of the main
yeah,
character in Carolina book built.
it's her brother and sister-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And this was all unintentional stuff. I only intended for Carolina Built to be its own thing, and it wasn't supposed to be a series.
Yeah.
But when I started doing research, I kept finding all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I end up with the second book, and then the third book will be about her grandniece, their granddaughter.
Yeah. Well, this is my final question before I open it up to the members. If someone is new to your catalog, which book would you recommend that they start with?
Hmm. Sorry, I've been talking all day.
It's okay.
I teach middle school English. So I would think, usually I tell people to go towards what they're interested in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like romance readers, I will ask them, contemporary or historical. For the historical readers, I have the historic series. And then for the contemporary people, I usually send them to the 404 Sound,
Okay.
because that's the most popular contemporary series.
Mm-hmm.
And then anybody who's interested in history in any way, I just send them to Carolina Built.
Okay.
Because I only have those two historical fictions published, Carolina Built and A Cut Above, which is the sequel. And right now I'm in grad school. I'm working on an MFA, and my thesis is a historical fiction novel about Hiram Revels,
Oh, okay.
another another famous North Carolinian. People know more people know him than knew Mrs. Leary,
Mm-hmm.
who was the first ever Black senator. And the people that know him for that specifically, but there were all these other things that he did during his life that I thought should be talked about. He was a minister when he was in seminary. He worked the Underground Railroad in Ohio and like three other states. He was an army chaplain during the Civil War, one of the only ones to be decorated for bravery in battle specifically. Typically it's the chaplain's job to like stay back at camp and like pray while the other guys go do the fighting. But he went into battle with his unit at Vicksburg in Jacksonville in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but he was decorated for bravery for that. And then after the Senate seat, which he only held for a year, he was alderman, he was city council, he did a lot of like local political stuff, but he was also the founding president of Alcorn State University. And so there was all these things outside of that 1 year that I felt
Yeah.
like he wasn't known for. So I've been working on this since like 2015. And I was like, well, this is the perfect opportunity to finish it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be my thesis. And once I've defended and gotten my degree, I'm going to publish it. And I haven't decided yet whether it's going to go to a house or we're going to indie it. Me and Sarah have been going back and forth about it. I think it just depends on how long it ends up being. If we think it's long enough, we'll probably send it out on submission.
I look forward to seeing that because I come from the Fayetteville, North Carolina area and always heard his name growing up.
Yeah, that's where he was born.
Mm-hmm.
Eastover at the
Yeah.
time was called Flea Hill.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the group?
I have a question. Um, so I was wondering, especially since um, there has been some pushback um, for um, especially for a lot of newer writers coming into the industry, especially particularly writers of color. I was wondering how you felt about, I know you mentioned um, Blue Sky and just
Mhm.
social media in general. Um, how or even if newer writers um, should look to like Blue Sky. And I've also heard a lot of talk about Substack
Mhm.
to get their writing in front of more pairs of eyes, so to speak. If they do find themselves finding pushback about their material from the more traditional publishing spaces.
Um, I think of social media as um, it's definitely secondary to the actual writing. I
Mhm.
have a strange relationship with social media. I have a lot of social media accounts and a decent amount of followers. I rarely ever post. I'm really bad at remembering to put the things. Like I will go on my TikTok and I have like 25 notifications. Um, and it's people being like, "Where's Kianna?" Um, she hasn't said anything in weeks. I'm like, "I'm alive, I promise, but I'm doing all these other things. I teach middle school for God's sake. Like I'm herding stray cats all day. I don't have the strength to type it out on my phone or to like set the phone up and film a TikTok. I think I use TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky mainly. I do have a Substack. Substack I use for my newsletter, and I don't think I've sent out a newsletter since like last summer. It's supposed to go out once a month. It goes out, I don't know, when the moon is in the seventh house, and I remember to put it out. But it's supposed to go out once a month. I transferred my MailChimp list into Substack because that was supposed to be an easier method of doing it because I could kind of pre-do it and like send it out on a schedule. Um, so it's Substack is you can, if you wanted to, you could publish stories on Substack because it gives you the space to do that. And the same can generally be said for like spaces like Blue Sky and Instagram. There's not a character limit stopping you from doing that. And it can be good to put like snippets on it. I always think of social media more as a way to interact with readers than anything else. Um, TikTok, Instagram, that's pretty much just readers reaching out to me. Um, you get to a certain point of saturation where other people start talking about what you're doing. So I've been tagged in a lot of like TikTok videos specifically about either about my lesbian romances or about Carolina Built, where somebody's just read it and they want to review it. The book talk girlies are talking about it, and then they'll tag me in the video or someone will tag me in the comments. And so I go into the app. I haven't said anything in weeks, but there's a bunch of notifications from someone else's content about something that I did. So that's kind of how I think of it, as kind of like the place where it's the room your name is spoken in when you're not there. Um, and then when you come in, it's like, oh, look, people haven't forgot, that I'm alive, even though I never say anything on here. I never thought of it as a way to like make connections like that outside of the water cooler spaces. So that pretty much only happened before on Twitter. And now it happens on Blue Sky. Like you don't really see editors, agents, and stuff following you like on TikTok and things like that. Like I will have an editor follow me after we're already working together,
Mhm.
but like I'm not getting like discovered over there by industry people. Like that's pretty much limited to Blue Sky. The rest of that happens in person when you go to conferences and writers club meetings and when you're hanging out in libraries for literary events, spaces where you would expect to see industry professionals. That's where the connections get made in terms of, I'm looking for an agent or I'm looking to be acquired or I want to find a great publicist. A lot of that either happens in very specific spaces like Blue Sky, um, with um with like the online scene, or it's happening in person when you go into literary events and spaces where you would expect to see those people. I've never really had any types of like professional connections like that happen over social media outside of the water cooler places. Um,
And one of our members, Hannah, asked, where can we get a link or what website or site should we go to check out your books? Because I know I saw your website,
Mhm.
Kianna Alexander Writes
Yeah.
dot com.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll I will drop that
Yeah.
link.
I do have on my website, like on the homepage, there's a little link that says buy my books, and it kind of has all the different stores. So like if you wanted to buy from Barnes and Noble, or you want to buy from Amazon, or you want to buy from IndieWire, or not IndieWire, the bookshop.org, from an indie store. They're all like little kind of separate icons, and then there's like a separate link for like people who want like a signed book or whatever, that want to order it from me so that I can sign it and send it to them. So there are links for all of that, and I have the merch and all that stuff is all tied to. I try to keep it all tied to the website.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions?
I
Hannah?
just wanted to say something. I want to give you kudos for teaching middle school. That I taught middle school and high school, and I taught middle school in Washington Heights in New York,
Mhm.
and I taught across the street from the high school performing arts in Manhattan.
That must have been
And that
interesting.
school was predominantly white, and the school I was in was predominantly black. And I asked them, did you guys ever like switch or anything? I said, yeah, we switched. We did, but it didn't work. And I said, it didn't work because of the teachers, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, that's a shame. That's a sad, sad shame. Literally across the street from one another. And that's
Yeah.
where I had 65 students per class. There weren't enough desks and kids had to sit on the floor. It's crazy.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then my smaller classes at middle school were 35.
Yeah, they're like I have 72 students, but that's the like the three classes that rotate to me.
Hmm.
So like the whole
Yeah, that was crazy.
entire, yeah.
I had a total of 190 students in middle school.
Hmm.
So
I can't
that's
imagine.
crazy.
I'd
I
probably
relate.
you're probably gone white by now.
Kiana,
Kudos to you.
Desmond would like to
You're a
know.
lively group, middle schoolers.
Oh yeah,
I
too many
really
hormones.
enjoyed this. I can't wait to read some of your books.
Thank you.
Kiana, Desmond was wondering if you had worked as a copy editor, and if yes, how you got your start.
I briefly did. I It was Macmillan Kids. I want to say, I don't know, 2021 maybe. It was only about a year, but just looking over the manuscripts for like children's books before they went to print. And that was something I found online. I want to say, I don't think anybody referred me to it. I want to say it was just from like a Google search. Like stumbled across a listing for it. And like once I found the listing, I know I asked Sarah if it was legit, because I there were a whole lot of fake listings. So generally you can find stuff like that online. It's always good that if you know somebody to ask if it's legit. Oftentimes, they might recognize a name or an email address and be like, "Oh yeah, I've worked with them before." Um, or they know that department actually exists, or that's the correct address for the publishing house. So it's good to like vet them, but I'm pretty sure I just found that one online. I didn't do it for very long.
Hmm.
Editing isn't my jam as much as writing is. It's something that I can do, like it's a skills that I have, but I don't enjoy it as much. So I didn't stick with it very long. But I mean, there are definitely positions out there, and a lot of houses are leaning heavily into freelancing. When it comes to those stages, copy editing, proofing, doing things like the guide with all the names in it. Like they're doing a lot of that with freelancers because they don't want to, have in-house people that they have to pay like benefits and full-time hours for. So they're definitely out there. It's just always good to vet them before you start sending out your personal information, because there are a lot of like scammy outfits out there just kind of, skimming people's data. But as long as you've vetted it, and you've sort of figured out whether or not it's real, you can generally find a decent amount of them online. Always, look at places like Predators and Editors. If you don't have like a personal connection to someone who can vet things, Predators and Editors, and also Reddit threads. There's a copy edit thread for on Reddit. They will tell you all the straight dirt on a Reddit post.
Mhm.
Most people are posting anonymously. They don't care about getting, blacklisted or whatever. A lot of times their name's not tied to it, so they'll just tell you what it is and what it ain't. So look in places like that, if you don't have somebody who can like personally vet for you.
Kiana is a well-published and a well-known author. Do you find yourself hit with a lot of scam attempts?
Yeah, to some degree, especially now that the AI stuff is like kicking off. And it's mostly like services, like people who are claiming to be publicists or marketers and saying, "Oh, we can get your book in front of a bigger audience." It's a lot of that kind of thing more than anything else. And I mainly get that either email or from, like the social media inbox. It's in my TikTok inbox or it's Instagram or somebody's messaging me under commenting under a post or something. It's usually that kind of thing. And it's almost all the time, obviously AI generated. If you send us $50, we can get your book out to this many readers and get you this many verified reviews, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that kind of thing. So I get a lot of like requests like that I know are, not legit. Most of the time I just ignore or delete them. Um, if I've seen the same one a couple of times, I'll report it. Um, I'll let my agent know, like, oh, this particular email address is continuously sending me these, scammy emails, can you put them on the list? Because maybe sometimes our other clients might always also be getting them. But sometimes they're just like carpet bombing.
Mhm.
They're looking at somebody's list and they're just sending it to everybody, or they've hijacked someone's email. I did
Mhm.
get one of those that was from an editor that I worked with years ago, and she's still with the same house, but she's not in the same position. And they like hijacked her old email and just sent out all these invites to a bunch of people. And we're all like emailing our agents, like, what is going on with this lady? She's sending weird emails. And they're like, no, no, she got hacked. Don't open it. So that kind of stuff happens pretty frequently. Um, but I think at this point, I've got a pretty trained eye. I kind of know, the people that I can trust to work with. I don't really stray too much outside of that just because the internet is full of, bandits who are looking to steal my money. So,
Oh,
Any other questions for Kiana? I guess not. Thank you so very much. This was just an absolutely wonderful conversation, and I'm so glad that you could join us this evening.
thank you.
Yes,
I'm,
This
I'm
was
thank
a lot
glad.
of
you.
fun,
I really enjoyed it.
yes.
and we look forward to seeing you in May. Very
Yes.
much so.
Yes.
This is the part of our meeting, Kiana, where we kind of share our good news. If anyone has something fun to report, a sale or a new market or anything at all. And I was wondering, does anyone have anything to talk about? Anything to share? I guess we do. Very, very quickly, an update on the conference. We are monitoring the registration page daily, and our attendees are racking up. So if you have not registered for the conference, I encourage you to please do so. We have a TAF Talk scheduled in on March 17 with our nonfiction keynote, Molly Guptill Manning. That is March 17th. I'll be sending out an announcement about that. And later on, we'll also be resharing our TAF Talk with Meg Medina, who is our fiction keynote this year. So look forward to that. And I think we are all set. Maya?
Okay. Well, again, thanks, Kiana, for speaking with us this evening. And thanks, Tara, for doing the interview. And I just want to thank everybody for attending tonight's meeting. And I do hope to see everybody back here on March 17th, which hopefully won't get in the way of any St. Patrick's Day plans.
Oh, wait,
or
did I say,
anything.
is that, it's, then it's the 16th. I
Oh, okay.
erred on the date. I realized in looking at the schedule when I was working with Molly, we realized that one of those dates was St. Patrick's Day. So I think it might be the 16th then if the 17th is St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure it was not on the holiday because I figured no one would show up.
All right.
Um, All right, sounds good. So yeah, if it's on the 16th, I think the 16th on a Monday.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll send a big ass announcement out to everybody.
okay. Okay. So yeah, so hopefully we'll see everybody on March 16th then,
All right.
for our TAF talk. But until then, I hope that everybody has a good evening.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Thanks again,
everybody.
everyone.
Great seeing
Bye.
Bye.
you all. Thank you again, Kiana.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. It
Wonderful.
was great.
Yes.